The deeper and deeper I go, I find what it is I should know. 'Cause it's just a matter of time that you'll reawaken your mind. Oh, come with me, come to know and find out what is true. Then you'll know what's in store just for you. No more living a lie. I can look to the sky and say, I'm reawakening minds. Come to know and find out what is truth, yes. Then you'll know what's in store just for you. No more living a lie. I can look to the sky and say, I'm reawakening minds.
Happy Holy Day, Moors. Welcome to House of Reawakening Minds. House of Reawakening Minds exists to provide for the exploration and practice of spirituality in an enlightened community dedicated to honoring the myriad of sacred pathways to the universal creator. We are a holistic center for spiritual grounding, free thought, self discovery, and Moorish science, an awakening experience for all ages. Tonight, I am pleased to present to you our National Grand Sheik, Taj Tarik Bey, as he presents Allegorical Job to Job Servitude. But before he begins, please be sure to like, share, and if you have not already done so, subscribe to our channel. Now, let's receive Grand Sheik Taj Tarik Bey.
Islam, Shalom, Assalamu alaikum, Vadimekum, Niyam. I want to share with you a little bit tonight relative to, we're going to give an overview of the allegorical story of Job as presented in the Heliothek, Septuaginta, Bible, etc. And it is an old Cushitic Berber allegorical story, because remember, when you're aware of the ancient Cushitic culture, you know that the stories that have been adopted via the many cultures around the world, and one being the allegorical Job, etc. You must look at it from a perspective of its original orientation, culture, and it's not to dismiss how people view the book of Job based on whatever houses of philosophy they've come from, but it has in its nature the allegorical story or the lessons relative to love, honor, truth, integrity, loyalty, perseverance, patience, long suffering, etc., justice, etc. And so many people, upon reading the book of Job, may get caught up in the perspectives of the concept of the creator, God, being somewhat callous or somewhat uncaring by not rescuing Job, who by the nature of the allegory loves God more and most honorably and dedicatedly. And the argument would go with many scholars, why would God allow Job to suffer when Job was so loyal to God? And now we understand, when you know the origin of the culture, that when you're referencing the allegorical story of Job, it is dealing with the developmental character of humanity also at large from time immemorial. And so we can derive lessons from Job to build character. Now, many of you who share with us here at the House of Reawakening Minds, you know that we, and many of you who listen to the lessons here at the House of Reawakening Minds and the different scholars who come on this platform to share with you, that we're aware of the alterations, modifications, omissions, etc., made by the various Constantinian scholars who have, altered the book, limited some of the information of the books, hidden some of the information of the different books in order to usurp the Cushitic culture and the way, or the allegorical forms in way the customs and traditions have been projected originally and have put their spin on it. But we're not arguing that issue at this time, although that is a conversation within itself. Our major issue here is to give some inference on a lot of the long suffering that people have been suffering in modern days, and more or less dealing with many of the things we've been talking about recently, because the argument is old, but it's actually never died. And so for us to come together and have another view, or an extended view, on the lessons that you can learn from Job relative to our social, political, economic experiences of today, we choose this. Now, in relationship to basic grammatication, particularly basic grammar, third degree or third level grammar, with punctuation and punctuation symbols, etc. When you're dealing with A, E, I, O, U, the vowels, etc., and then you see the what you would call the pet, like the loop, and then the straight line dealing with long and short. Say as an example, A, ah, and A, E and E, O and ah. And so Job is with a long O, and job is with a short O, and yet they're spelled the same. And so you have your punctuation symbols that are in place to indicate long and short relative to the vowels, etc. So I just want to interject that. But and also to remind you that we're quite aware of the fact that, again, as I inferred earlier, that many of the people, particularly any of you scholars who happen to be sharing with us here at the House of Reawakening Minds, we're not contesting or pretending that we are not aware of the dark priesthood and their operations with altering Cushitic script and or representing it, particularly in around the 1700s, with their many transliterations, deliberately trying to remove the original Cushitic culture, or what we may call the Berber culture, from which those scripts originate. So we will be talking about Nubia, Eritrea, Egypt, etc. But we know that when we're making reference to all of these areas, including Canaan, etc., the Moabites, etc., that essentially we're talking about extended families of the same people. So we're not confused about that, and we don't want you to be confused about that. However, and we're not making the argument relative to the grammatical perceptions. We're just simply using the allegorical story to share the lesson. Now, for many of you who are familiar with Job, so we're just going to do a little background on Job from the perspective that the people get it, who are presented from Septuaginta Bible, etc., Heliotech. So we're talking about general lessons from the book of Job. Now, so when you're looking at the book of Job, logically, it presents many ideas and questions and perceptions, etc., and appearances of contradiction of agenda. However, let's just, for the sake of conversation, let's give a little bit about Job. So the book of Job, and the suffering of Job. So Job is described in the Bible basically as being honorable, blameless, etc., and generally a righteous and upright man. So that's the general picture of the category that is placed upon Job as a subject of study. Now, so Job feared God, and from the different perceptions of scholarship, you may go from Allah, Shiva, etc. All of these are in their original form, etc., expressed by people as time has passed, and you have different versions or different views of the book or the culture or the Cushitic culture. Those who know that many of these different names that are given actually have origin or root, that many of these names that are given to what we call the creative force, the principle of the creative force, allegorical, are actually the same, just not known to the general public. So we want to say that as a qualification. So Job is described by God as being a blameless and upright man generally in that nature, and he fears God and shuns all evil, or shuns or rejects injustice, rejects imbalance, rejects fraud, rejects prima facie misrepresentation, etc., like that. So basically, he's referred to as basically a blameless, just man who stands for righteousness in general. And so when you're looking at the book, say Job 1, 8, and it describes the long and difficult trials that he experienced. His life continues to serve as an example for perseverance for all the ancient Coptic peoples, which is still Cushitic. And so in your more modern world, they're called the original Coptic Christians. So you're not looking, or we're not debating the issue or confusing, but we are clarifying that the original Coptic or Hikupta Christian is not related in the way people think it is to the modern Constantine order that has been presented, particularly since the hybrid Europeans have taken over and rewritten and recomposed and altered and modified the Berber culture for the sake of subjugating humanity. That's an argument in its own right, but that's not what we're arguing. I just want to make that point so many of you who know or who have scholarship don't confuse the motive of this conversation. So now when you're talking about the story of Job, it begins by describing an encounter between, quote unquote, the higher self and the lower self, or what we refer to today as Satan and God. And God asks if he's considered in relationship to Satan, has he considered Job's righteousness? And that would be Job 1:8 and 2:3. Now, Satan responds to God by accusing Job of only serving God because of the blessings he had received. And so God allows Satan to take these physical blessings from Job. And this begins with Job's livelihood, his children, etc., and then ultimately his health. Now, when you're looking at Job and the long-standing suffering, consider the conditions of the direct descendants of those ancient Canaanite Moabites, the Cushitic people of the West, who have been branded many names over the years, and many of them do not relate to their Cushitic origins. And so commonly in modern days, in the more contemporary days, we would generally refer to these different Cushitic tribes collectively as, quote unquote, Moors. And the defeat or the destruction that had been put upon these Cushitic people of the Maghreb, or what you call the Western Hemisphere, have been commonly known as the Black Codes. And so many conversations, we're all familiar with that. But the point being made is many of the people not knowing the lower self and the higher self principles in the sociology of humanity, or often referred to as hominidae, etc., may look at the book of Job with somewhat disdain, recognizing that they have been suffering for generations and never making relationship or correlation of the book of Job or the allegorical story of Job and themselves, actually. And because what is happening on the planet as of late, relative to the nations of the earth beginning to reject the energies of the dark priesthood, who would be represented in the story of Job as Satan. People are analyzing all of the books, the different books, whether you're dealing with the Bible, Quran, etc., the Bhagavad Gita, the Vedas, etc., all of your ancient books, the as how would you Kybalion, other books that different books that actually give little keys to the Cushitic culture, but are not generally recognized by the average everyday readers as having relationship to each other when they absolutely do. Um, but we want to look at the relationship of what we're dealing with today. Now, many of you who are social scholars and liberators for humanity today may use different tools to counter what we call shaitan or satanic, or what we call dark side, black magic, used by peoples who lean to the darker side of causing injury to humanity. And so we will look at the book of Job, and that category of spirit will refer to as Satan. Because remember, you're dealing with energy. You're dealing with energy, positive and negative, and you're dealing with higher self, lower self. Keep that in mind. And the allegorical and anthropomorphic look at the Job principle. And so, what is most commonly known by many of you scholars today, relative to that spirit, that negative spirit of operatives relative to Satan and Satan's minions in relationship to Job, and the jealousy that the dark side priesthood has against the creative forces, etc., or the positive, etc., you will look at what I would say, as an example, the King Alfred plan as an example. And that would be a most apropos and basically documented, condensed informational source that scholars around the world know, and the people here, particularly at the Maghreb or North America, are aware of, to the social, economic, and political operations of that spirit of Satan that's making reference in the book of Job and executed against the people as a collective whole. And that would be, as you all know, also referred to politically in its documented form, in its military operative documented form that's presented to all of the persons operating particularly at North America and in all your Western Hemisphere governmental structures, known to them as silent weapons, Executive Order 11490, military designated King Alfred. And it contains just the vital excerpts from Executive Order 11490, and it was issued among the politicians, local, statewide, and federal, officially October the 19th, of 1969 and is generally referred to as the King Alfred Plan. And the Rex 84 Plan, concentration camps, Executive Order 11490, and its expanded form known as Top Secret Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars Introductory Programming Manual, Technical Manual TM-SW7905.1. And so this is the general title of the foundation for the social engineering given in a synoptic form to all politicians and persons operating in all of your so-called secret societies, such as, Kaiklos, Ku Klux Klan, Illuminati, Knights Templars, Knights of Columbus, Daughters of ISIS, Daughters of the American Revolution, Freemasons, Odd Fellows, etc. Many, many Knights of Malta, many more of your secret societies, and which logically creates in the minds of many of the everyday people who are part and partial of the political platforms of the United States Corporation Company, and those who are part and parcel, i.e., dealing with the people of the land, who by subjugation and political occupation have been and are the major targets of the corporate operatives operating under what you know as the U.S., which scholars know is really unum sanctum, and the doctrine of discovery, which most of you know. And this is another view on how to look at these things. So let's look at the dedicated pressures coming from the jealousy of what you would call the Satanists, dealing with their actual and factual and generally documented political exercises, meaning that this is the guideline by which they operate relative to the organic people of the land. Now, many of you will hit on a few things that you are familiar with, so that you can relate it to other things less familiar that we share, and put this in perspective, and mainly for the point of giving people some reference points where they can start restoring reference points that are generally removed from them, and have some points or pieces of the puzzle to help put together to help make life better for the people of the land, etc. So relative to what we would call the Satan side of the Job story, this is a reflection, direct, not opinion. This is direct, documented reflection of their social, economic, and political policies, written and shared with all politicians, local, municipal, township, state, and their subdivisional agencies, etc. Whether you're dealing with, Homeland Security, all three-letter alphabet agencies, Federal Reserve, executive, that is federal, state, and local governments, etc. This is their actual political policies documented. Executive Order 11490, Job, keep that in mind. Security. It is patently impossible to discuss social engineering or the automation of a society, i.e., the engineering of social automation systems known as silent weapons, on a national or worldwide scale without implying extensive objectives of social control and destruction of human life, i.e., slavery and genocide. This manual is in itself an analog declaration of intent. Such a writing must be secured from public scrutiny, otherwise, it might be recognized as a technically formal declaration of domestic war. Furthermore, whenever any person or group of persons in a position of great power and without the full knowledge and consent of the public uses such knowledge and methodology for economic conquest, it must be understood that a state of domestic warfare exists between said person or group of persons and the public. The solution of today's problems requires an approach which is ruthlessly candid, with no agonizing over religious, moral, or cultural values. You have qualified for this project because of your ability to look at humanity or human society with cold objectivity, and yet analyze and discuss your observations and conclusions with others of similar intellectual capacity without a loss of discretion or humility. Emphasize, such virtues are exercised in your own best interest. Do not deviate from them. 11490, Executive Order. Welcome aboard. This publication marks the 25th anniversary of the Third World War, called, quote unquote, Quiet War, being conducted using subjective biological warfare fought with, quote unquote, silent weapons. This book contains an introductory description of this war, its strategies, and its weaponry. Date, May 1979, number 74-1120. Historical introduction. Silent weapons technology has evolved from operations research, a strategic and tactical methodology developed under the military management in England during World War II. And the original purpose of operations research was to study the strategic and tactical problems of air and land defense with the objective of effective use of limited military resources against foreign enemies, i.e., logistics. It was soon recognized by those in positions of power that the same methods might be useful for totally controlling a society, but better tools were necessary. Social engineering, the analysis and automation of a society, requires the correlation of great amounts of constantly hanging economic information, generally referred to as data. So a high-speed computerized data processing system was necessary, which could race ahead of the society and predict when social or society would arrive for capitulation. Relay computers were too slow, but the electronic computer, invented in 1946 by J. Presper Eckert and John W. Mauchly, filled the bill. The next breakthrough was the development of the simple method of linear programming in 1947 by the mathematician George B. Dantzig. Then in 1948, the transistor, invented by J. Bardeen, W. H. Brayton, and W. Shockley, promised great expansion of the computer field by reducing space and power requirements. And with these three in positions of power, strongly suspected that it was possible for them to control the whole world with the push of a button. Immediately, the Rockefeller Foundation got in on the ground floor by making a 4-year grant to Harvard College, funding the Harvard Economic Research Project for the study of the structure of American economy. 1 year later, in 1949, the United States Air Force joined in. In 1952, the original grant period terminated, and a high-level meeting of the elite was held to determine the next phase of social operations research. The Harvard Project had been very fruitful, as is borne out by the publication of some of its results in 1953, suggesting the feasibility of economic social engineering studies in the structure of American economy. Copyright 1953 by Vasily Leontief, International Sciences Press Incorporated, White Plains, New York. Engineered in the last half decade of the 1940s, the now quiet war machine stood, so to speak, in sparkling gold-plated hardware on the showroom floor by 1954. With the creation of the Moser in 1954, the promise of unlocking unlimited sources of fusion atomic energy from the heavy hydrogen in seawater and the consequent availability of unlimited social power became a possibility only decades away. The combination was irresistible. The Quiet War was quietly declared by the international elite at a meeting held in 1954. Although the silent weapons systems was nearly exposed 13 years later, the evolution of the new weapon system has never suffered any major setbacks. And this volume marks the 25th anniversary of the beginning of the Quiet War. Already, this domestic war has had many victories on many fronts throughout the world. And of course, they go on to the political introduction and energy, etc. Now, one of the things I want to give note to, and Dr. G, you can comment on this. You know, when you had the conversation earlier and you were discussing, you know, the orphan trains, right?
Yes.
And of course, we already know with the different Cushite tribes here, you know, that they call Seneca, you know, which would include that area. And they would refer to some of the Cushite tribes here as Seneca Indians, etc. Right? And you already know a lot of those dynamics. Then look at the timeline, 1954, the same timeline. Now, keep in mind, officially, and we already know the timeline for most of their official public pronunciations or pronouncements, etc., relative to a lot of their operations are always late, which means if they announce it 1 year, 9 times out of 10, it's been in operation 10 to 20 years before. It's just that they reveal it. But look at a lot of things we talk about when you're looking at some of the dynamics people are dealing with the commercialization of all human activity relative to any operation dealing with the United States. That correlation of 1954, correlation when they started promoting the 14th Amendment straw man operation with the unratified 14th Amendment operation with the made artificially constructed or made popularity of your so-called civil rights leaders under the guise of appearing to be doing the good for the people when it was actually bringing them in actually into subjugation, etc. and then take the correlation of that with the suppression, the deliberate misrepresentation and suppression of consular court venue, 1954, with the Dwight D. Eisenhower administration, which we've talked about many times, etc. So look at these date executions. Now, keep in mind, while many of these things were going on since early 40s, and the publication on the scale of many of your political operatives operating under the United States Corporation Company, notice their direct correlation with England, etc., and the military operations. And as you know, when we discuss some of these things with the social economic injuries that are happening to the people, we will mention to the people the Circle Church in Chancery, Fleet Street, England, and that gives you a little bit more concept or point of reference for the people who are sharing with us to do some cross reference and start looking at those correlations, and then looking at the British Bar Association, the Crown, right? And we know the Crown, the duality of the Crown. We know when we're talking the truth about the Crown, where the masses are generally looking at Nottingham, and they're looking at what they would call Queen Elizabeth, whose matriarchal image would be placed on the coinage for all nations that have been conquered by, i.e., Britain, etc., i.e., the hybrid takeover, etc., operatives. And there's an absolute correlation of both the dates. And when you look at the book of Job, you'll look at or notice the correlation of the tests, the pressures, and the abuses put upon Job by Satan. And then look at the Rockefeller Foundation, right? Then look at the establishment of the General Education Board, 1902, after the assassination of Winona at Shakamoxon territory, which we know as Philadelphia, right? That Philadelphia. And then you look at the establishing operatives known as John D. Rockefeller and Frederick T. Gates. Then do examination of the social engineering that we've talked about many times, and you look at the animal husbandry training imposed upon the people in the name of education, which is absolutely what you would call psychic attacks and deliberate mental corruption under the guise of organized government. All this stuff is there for anyone to examine. But again, like I said, one of the things I wanted to talk about Job and Job is when you do the research, and we won't go into all the details. We'll do that at another time. But look at when you start doing the general education operations for those who are planning the curriculum and the administrations of the educational systems, particularly at North America, and this will include Canada, etc., you will see that the education system is designed in its nature from Job, or the constrictions and perpetrations against Job, translated from the long O to the short, or what we call abbreviated O of Job. And you will notice that they actually planned with social engineering to steal the best hours of the day, and they later call it 9 to 5, if you get the point. Now, when you look at those numbers of the 9 to 5, you can look at them Kabbalistically, and you can analyze them numerically, etc., and recognize that they were strategically adopted to actually enslave humanity. Now, when you look at you'll notice that they will deal them or operate them in what you call rhythmic rhythmic cycles. So the people would go into what they refer to as the job or the job, never thinking or being preoccupied, making what they would call making a living, making a living. Notice that. And that if they did not have a job, that their families would not eat. They could not buy or sell without the numbers, the mark or the numbers imposed upon them, not unlike mark and reprisal dealing with the issue of booty and prize, that of course is against the constitution of man, and of course against the constitution of what you will call any allodial instrument of legitimate government. And you will see absolute correlations in the nature of the character of the Satan principle presented in the story of Job, etc. And here we have it actually documented in its abbreviated form of Executive Order 11490. And I know over the years we've made that correlation, but I wanted to share that correlation with the people today, because many of the people are looking at the rhythmic change, or what you call a cyclical adjustment, that are made for the new tests that are being put upon Job with the job market. And it's interesting that many of the people probably, and you present your analysis, Dr. G. Their jobs are threatened, right?
Mm-hmm.
And because the people have been trained most of their lives around their job. And as we talk over the years, many of the people have never known themselves or really evolved or developed on their own social, political, and spiritual merit, for the sake that most of their lifespan is spent on their job and upon the job and their service to the job, which becomes their whole personality in such a way, politically and economically. And they're tied to it like a lifeblood, that if they don't do their job or seek a job or cling to a job or maintain a job, that everything that would be taken from them, even when they're on the job, that the Satanists would tax them or tithe them in order to make sure that they have no evolutionary or long-term development of the implication of the trading of those vouchers, which of course we already know is not money. But with the trading that it or training that it is money, the people actually from childhood were being trained on their job to go get these private commercial voucher instruments tied to the Sister QV trust of the Pope of Rome, not knowing that that's the relationship, or even knowing that those were tied to treasury bonds and actually sold and bid upon by the day in the operations of Wall Street. And then when you look at the congressional military complex that is supported by the bond system and the constant wars that are going on around the planet to create death and suffering, i.e., what we refer to loosely, though not properly, as blood money. And then you look again at the book of Job and you see the absolute correlation. And then I was thinking too the other day when you were talking to me about the perspectives or perceptions that people have about orphans. And you were sharing with me some of your research on the orphan trains here operating at North America. And then you look at the correlations between the Job market at that time. You look at the correlations between the Job market at the time when Roosevelt started using the birth certificate to refund their private corporation that most people didn't know belonged to the church and Circle Church and Chancery of England, i.e., and many people, even to today, many scholars today don't even know that the voucher system, or what they would call of the Federal Reserve, etc., is run from Fleet Street, England, under the circle, church, and chancery. And then when you do the research of the circle, church, and chancery, you find out its secondary presentment to the world is, quote unquote, the crown. And you find out that that is the central body, or what you call jump off point, for the attorneys, lawyers, etc., that in their modern form are really in the biblical form Pharisees and Sadducees. And then you look back at the Job story and you'll see the absolute correlation. Now I've always looked at that from that perspective, because it absolutely correlates. Absolutely correlates. And I thought it would be interesting to share that with people, to give them some encouragement. The experience logically is negative. However, to give the people some encouragement, because keep in mind, one of the keys to the fiat system of the Sadducees and Pharisees is the fact that people have faith in it, and that its power over the people is actually not it itself, but is in fact the people's faith in it. And then when you look at the faith issue, you look at that same issue with the private commercial paper operations relative to steal the energies of the people. And as you already know, central to the operations of Executive Order 11490 is the corralling of energy. Now, so when we're looking at the energy from a metaphysical point of view, all right, or what you call, Isis, Amun Ra, Elohim, i.e., the collective energies of the 12 what you would call systems or constellations or bodies of stars in this particular solar system, and you look at it from another point of view that's not hidden, it's really there. But if you look at it, allegorical, you're looking at extracting of energy or controlling energy in the solar system. On the surface, you probably would never, the average person would never even look at it that way. I've always looked at it that way, but I'm just giving or sharing or building conversation to project or to encourage people to look at things in the political realm, in their economic experience, etc., with a little more obvious insight. And that none of these things that are happening to the people are accidental, but they're absolutely planned.
They're not only not accidental, they're cyclical, meaning that
exactly.
These cycles, some talk about the yugas and so forth, but they're actually cycles that have been occurring and reoccurring over for the millennia.
Yes.
And the fact of the matter is that, some have escaped it. Very, very few, but there are some who have escaped it. But when you go back to the subject matter of the orphan trains that I've been studying intently, I sent you videos and some things that I've been looking at. One of the interesting things you mentioned, Seneca Village was the land now known as Central Park that was populated by the Aboriginal people of that area. They were, I can't remember the two names of the modern Europeans that came up with the idea that they would do a classification of some sort and start to look at their so-called the mental capabilities of various peoples, mostly our people, and they begin this
classification of the people.
Right, they begin to classify them as mentally like what we would call, folks with retarded or not able to function well in society. But the standards were established by them. So they established the standards, just like, Darwin established this theory. And a lot of people go off of that. Doesn't mean it's true. Now, but because of it, it has been used, to declassify or to put in a lower status, billions upon billions of people who, don't look like them. So they use that those classifications to take over Seneca Village somehow. But we talked about it. Two men would have to have others behind them. Two men in and of themselves could not do it by themselves. So it was it was, it's always a hand behind
Yes.
there's always somebody, that's moving the puppet's mouth. So
Yes.
when they did that, they left a lot of orphans. They put the parents in asylums. They created these, or whether they created it or they took over these castle-like structures, and there was asylums all over the place. The children ended up becoming orphans, and they put them on trains. They had, some of them didn't look like us, but they used them to be a replacement for, allegedly, for slavery, because they would adopt these children, but they would use them as indentured servants under the guise of adoption.
Yes. And look at the obvious. Now, when you look at the correlation of those operations, then you look at Executive Order 11490 and the Rex 84 plan and the Eugenics program, which is clearly identified within the context if you have the eyes to see it, right? And the manipulation that was made to execute the actual genocide was actually cleverly done via the operations of creating and dissolving, quote unquote, the Job market.
Well, yeah.
Constantly. But it's not what you would look at on the surface, if you get the point.
Right. So I've got pictures on my phone of actual the baby incubators. They were literally making babies. And I have pictures of them holding up multiples of babies that look like clones of each other. Right. And they had signs that said, bake them 12 months. They go from this to this. They literally were making, they talk about how there's so many doppelgangers, people that look alike. Well, they were making multiples.
Yeah.
And there are pictures literally of them holding, they would say live babies. They had incubators all over the country, where they were actually they were making babies, making babies. They were cloning them back then.
Clearly eugenics, right?
Right.
Now look at the correlations with the operations of research of the early 40s, right? Then look at the establishment of the Food and Drug Administration operations. Then look at the operations of the pharmaceutical military complex. Now, what's that, 1942 area? Even when it became popular with many of the same orphans of the people, or the people that they were genociding out of the Seneca area, what was happening to all these? Where they didn't just disappear, and all of a sudden you had all this construction, early 40s, of fast food burgers of interest. Is there any correlation with the cases of human DNA in the food supply that's in world court as we speak, but it's not spoken of? And then you look at the aspects of the suffering of Job translated into the social engineering of the Cushitic people of the Western Hemisphere, who are really the true Americans, etc. And then you look at all of the social engineering with both the correlation of dates and the particular, quote unquote, people who happen to be calling themselves elite, and the quote unquote relationship to the same people set up the General Education Board and determine the working hours of the job. And then when you look at the orphan trained principles of operation, there's a distinct relative correlation with creation and collapsing by an engineering methodology of the job system in order to justify the underlying mission, which was clearly genocide, but people aren't looking at the genocide, they're looking at the job. Interesting, isn't it?
It is.
Job and Job.
I'm reading a book that Sister Cynthia turned me on to, and I would highly recommended.
Yeah.
It's not even 100.
Can I share the cover so that people can see
I
that?
want to say it's a little under 100 pages.
And then talk to me about it.
Yeah. Okay. Here you
Now,
go. Let me see.
can you see this?
Bring it down just a little bit. Okay. Your hand is over the title, but the author at the bottom, but the title of the book. Yeah. The navigator who crossed the ice walls, and says worlds beyond the Antarctica, and it's by Nas Confundum. You see that at the very bottom. You can get this book on Amazon. It's like 90 some pages, and it is a I want to say it's somebody's diary or something that
Interesting.
The author has gotten Claudio Nocelli, who's on the back. You see him on the back. He was a prize. Do you know how they write their? I guess it was
their dissertations.
A biography.
Yeah.
This guy who wrote this had served in the Continental Navy.
Interesting.
And the Continental Navy was what, 1775 to 1785. Yeah. And so he's mentioning his role in that and so forth. But they end up for somehow, after he gets out, getting one of the old ships that they had retired ships, and he had heard about what was beyond the Antarctic. And when they actually get over there, and when they get over there, it turns out that there are people over there that have been there since before. Check this out. One of the last few resets. And what I thought was so interesting.
What they refer to as a reset, yeah.
What they refer to, they called it, the people over there called it a reset.
I'll expand on that a little bit, Dr. G, so that the listeners can.
Well, the reason why I thought it was interesting is right now all you hear is reset. And we think the reset has just to do with the changing of the fiat currency into gold and silver. But the term reset and how it's been utilized according to the law, the account in this book, is that it was a reset of actual humanity, so to speak. And what they said that they did was basically that they would kill everybody except the infants and start all over.
To regroom.
Yeah, but they talk about what has been sprayed. In 1783, 85, they're telling them that you all are being sprayed by something that shortens your lifespan by a third.
Yeah,
we live
over
on this side, we live to be 240 years plus. They're saying, but because they are literally are deliberately doing, and it's all in this book is such it is such an eye opener, because I'm thinking, like, everybody's talking about a rapture. Is there a misconception of what the rapture is? Just like there might be a misconception, right? And
as opposed to the actuality of the social engineering.
What does it mean?
That is taking place, but not viewed as what it is.
People are being prepared. We're being prepared for something that won't be what it is they expected when it comes. So we're looking at a reset. We're thinking all of a sudden, even though we do know that gold and silver and other precious metals are currency, because they can hold
they're not currency, they're the money.
They're the money, so to speak, and they can hold a current, if you will, conduct current. But is that what they mean? What they were planning based on what's, like, say, in this book that was happening in the 1700s? They were talking about people holding. They were talking about lights. Seeing all of these lights and seeing people holding devices where they were talking into, and they could see. Meaning, all in 1785, the stuff that we're holding in our hands and looking out today is already existed on the other side of the Antarctic, the ice wall, that they've been hiding, that they don't want people to get to, because those people are almost like the missing Atlantis.
Yeah. In other words, the people been shielded.
They purposely got away from there. So when these people got over there, it seemed like they also brought with them those who have been trying to get over there anyway to destroy that society. So there, but what I'm saying is, when I saw things like reset, killing all the adults by poisoning them and getting rid of, and keeping the babies to start over again. And then when you get the babies, you can program the young babies, give me the child, whether the Pope or whoever, one of those guys say, for the first 7 years and I'll show you the man. So they indoctrinate and program the children, and they put them in society to be who they want them to be. And this has apparently been going, we're talking 1785.
Yes, now, again, and so it goes now when you're looking at, and we will be looking at a few hundred years, right? But is that not in relationship to the controlling, management, and engineering of the energy outputs of humanity via social engineering that the people in general have associated with their jobs, which are dealing with the average person? They're not even aware that that is a total unnatural construct, because most people look at the economics and their job as a natural process of organized civilization, as and it's only as it factually is. It is indeed not that, and has never been that, but it's never looked at from that point of view. And yet, when people are looking at their jobs being threatened, the people are actually trying to go back into the plants, right? Plantation, and not necessarily knowing that in some instance they're being liberated from the plantation, but they don't have other reference points. And because we know that many of the people today are more in tune with their intuitive mind, that just projecting some of this conversation would spur or inspire them to think, because a lot of the solutions for humanity are going to come from many people who probably on the surface of it all don't even consider themselves actually part of the solution. And then others not knowing that they're part of the problem for lack of not having reference points. Now, as an interjection, even with the conversation of Job and also the operations of the Circle Church and Chancery via the guise of government and federal government agencies, who are really engineering, quote unquote, what you just mentioned, Dr. G, the quote unquote reset. Look at that as the cyclical operations of the injuries or the psychic attacks projected at Job, and are reflective absolutely even to this day in the job market. And so looking at or analyzing the metaphysical Job, etc., and the job market is very, very, very interesting, because the correlations are really directly related. And I think, just as you talked about the technological advancements
that were already there in the 1700s.
Yeah, exactly, which we already know about. The general fact of a lot of the technology actually being ancient, but the fact that you would have authors begin to write about, from a manifest point of view, write about the operations of the beyond the ice wall of Antarctica, and really why the hybrids have been bordering, or what you call cartoning, that off from the general population, which logically kills the whole psychosis of the social engineering population, technology, automotive design, everything that we're dealing with today under the guise of advancement, which is actually obsolete at the point it's even constructed. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. Can I share just a little bit of a little paragraph that kind of got me?
Go ahead.
It's okay. It's kind of being narrated. I would have every desire to be able to say that I understand, but the truth is that I am lost in all this. What do you refer to as ancient humanity? How many humanities exist or existed?
Yeah.
The answer was there were many. There were many humanities in different times, as well as there were many resets or reboots. This happens every certain time, already stipulated, or it is done before that date for external reasons. I mean, in a way, intentionally created before reaching that time. As far as we know here in reality, it always happens this way, since the quote unquote natural way is also carried out by the same, by manipulating the environment where you come from. The reboot is a process they carry out in their lands, which means over here, to annihilate every human being, leaving only their newborn babies to repopulate those lands and carry out the same process over and over again. The reasons for the reboot, according to our information, is carried out when something gets out of the control of those who rule on the other side of the ice walls. The factors can be several, and they do not doubt it. Believe me, the knowledge of other lands can lead to a reset. It could be by pests, floods, fires, plagues, wars, missiles, or war bombs they call asteroids, or it could be all that together. It doesn't matter how. The fact that we have escaped before is reason enough of a threat for them not to want us breathing. Do you understand me now? So basically, the things that, right now, the environment, they were using the environment and all those things as the same things that we see and are especially if you live in certain places and are experiencing right now, are the things that are mentioned here. So it's like when the people got too much what they consider knowledge of self, of truth, of reality, then they said, look, we got to shut it down. We got to start all over with the babies that don't know nothing. And I was wondering how did we get from the generations that knew to so many generations that didn't know? And now it makes sense. So when you put our people in insane asylums and kill them and make them into, other stuff, as you mentioned, and then you got babies left, then you program them to not even realize who they were, their greatness or whatever. And so you can put the slave narrative in them. You can put the white superiority, if you will, in them, because they didn't know any better. And you, by the same token, you do this to the modern Europeans, because they're being programmed to think they're superior.
Now, as you're looking at this, and then you look at, because remember, the most direct way that the engineering can be done is via the Job market. And so when so when you're looking at the metaphysical or the allegorical Job, and then look at the research operations of Executive Order 11490, then even looking at the Margaret Sanger programming, the Eugenics, then look at what you're expressing now, even when you're looking at the moves that were made, meaning that look at certain specific things that were done in relationship to the orphan trains. When you look at the political background, the canvas of social political operations, and you'll see in every instance the cover-up of the actual genocide operations is covered up with the view of the people analyzing the economic resources relative to jobs. And so let's look at what you just shared with us, and let's go to Executive Order 11490 and see if we don't see some correlation. And relative to, and we're back at Quiet Weapons for Silent Wars, the Executive Order 11490, diversion, the primary strategy. And make notes on the correlations, Dr. G. Experience has proven that the simplified method of securing a silent weapon and gaining control of the public is to keep the public undisciplined and ignorant of the basic system's principles on the one hand, while keeping them confused, disorganized, and distracted with matters of no real importance on the other hand. This is achieved by 1. Disengaging their minds, sabotaging their mental activities by providing a low-quality program of public education in mathematics, logic, systems design, and economics, and by discouraging technical creativity. 2. Engaging their emotions, increasing their self-indulgence, and their indulgence in emotional and physical activity by A. Unrelenting emotional affrontations and attacks, mental and emotional rape, by way of a constant barrage of sex, violence, and wars in the media, especially the TV and the newspapers. B, giving them what they desire in excess, junk food for thought, and depriving them of what they really need. 3, rewriting history and law and subjecting the public to the deviate or deviant creation, thus being able to shift their thinking from personal needs to highly fabricated outside priorities. And these preclude their interest in and discovery of the silent weapons of social automation technology. The general rule is that there is profit in confusion. The more confusion, the more profit. Therefore, the best approach is to create problems and then offer solutions. Diversion, summary, media. Keep the adult public attention diverted away from the real social issues and captivated by matters of no real importance. Schools. Keep the young public ignorant of real mathematics, real economics, real law, and real history. Entertainment. Keep the public entertainment below a sixth grade level. Work. Keep the public busy, 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 with no time to think on the farm with their other animals, i.e., Job, see?
Mhm.
Consent, the primary victory. A silent weapon system operates upon data obtained from a docile public by legal, but not always lawful, force. Much information is made available to silent weapon systems programmers through the Internal Revenue Service. See the studies on the structure of American economic or economy for an IRS source list. Now, this information consists of the enforced delivery of well-organized data obtained in federal and state tax forms, collected, assembled, and submitted by slave labor, provided by taxpayers and employees or employers. Furthermore, the number of such forms submitted to the IRS is a useful indicator for public consent, an important factor in strategic decision making. Other data sources are given in the short list of inputs: consent coefficients, numerical feedback indicating victory status, psychological basis. With the government, or when the government is able to collect tax and seize private property without just compensation, it is an indication that the public is ripe for surrender and is consenting to enslavement and legal encroachment. A good and easily qualified or quantified indicator of harvest time is the number of public citizens who pay income tax despite an obvious lack of reciprocal or honest service. Amplification energy sources. The next step in the process of designing an economic amplifier is discovering the energy sources. The energy sources which support any primitive economic system are, of course, a supply of raw materials and the consent of the people to labor and consequently assume a certain rank, a certain position, certain level, or certain class in the social structure, i.e., to provide labor at various levels in the pecking order. And each class, in guaranteeing its own level of income, controls the class immediately below it, and hence preserves the class structure. And this provides stability and security, but also government from the top. As the time goes on and the communications and education improve, the lower class element of the social labor structure become knowledgeable and envious of the good things that the upper class members have. And they also begin to attain a knowledge of energy systems and the ability to enforce their rise through the class structure. This threatens the sovereignty of the elite. In this rise, the lower classes can be postponed long enough. If the rise of the lower classes can be postponed long enough, the elite can achieve energy dominance, and labor by consent no longer will hold a position of an essential economic energy source. Until such energy dominance is absolutely established, the consent of the people to labor and let others handle their affairs must be taken into consideration. And since failure to do so could cause the people to interfere with the final transfer of energy sources to the control of the elite, it is essential to recognize that at this time, public consent is still an essential key to the release of energy in the process of economic amplification. And therefore, consent as an energy release mechanism will now be considered. Logistics. The successful application of a strategy requires a careful study of inputs, outputs, and the strategy connecting the inputs and the outputs and the available energy sources to fuel the strategy. And this study is called logistics. The logistical problem is studied at the elementary level first, and then levels of greater complexity are studied as a synthesis of elementary factors. Now, this means that a given system is analyzed, i.e., broken down into its subsystems, and these in turn are analyzed until by this process one arrives at the logistical quote unquote atom, the individual. And this is where the process of pardon me, I keep missing it. Synthesis properly begins, and at the time of the birth of the individual. Consider this with Roosevelt during 33 and the fake bank holidays. So knowing that the bank is the bench of the Pope, put that in perspective, and then put that in perspective to the job market. Back to the document. The artificial womb, and from the time a person leaves its mother's womb, every effort is directed toward building, maintaining, and withdrawing into artificial wombs and various sorts of substitute protective devices or shells. And the objective of these artificial wombs is to provide a stable environment for both stable and unstable activity, to provide a shelter for the evolutionary processes of growth and maturity, i.e., survival, to provide security for freedom, and to provide definitive protection for offensive activity, or defensive protection for offensive activity. And this is equally true of both the general public and of the elite. However, there's a definite difference in the way each of these classes go about the solution of problems. The political structure of a nation, quote unquote, dependency. The primary reason why the individual citizens of a country create a political structure is a subconscious wish or desire to perpetrate their own dependency relationship of childhood. So they hire politicians to face reality for them. Summary. The people hire the politicians so that the people can, one, obtain security without managing it. Two, obtain action without thinking about it. Three, inflict theft, injury, and death upon others without having to contemplate either life or death. Four, avoid responsibility for their own intentions. 5. Obtain the benefits of reality and science without exerting themselves in the discipline of facing or learning either of these things. They give the politicians the power to create and to manage a war machine to 1. Provide for the survival of the quote unquote nation womb. 2. Prevent encroachment of anything upon the nation womb. 3. Destroy those citizens of their country who do not conform for the sake of stability of the nation womb. Politicians hold many quasi-military jobs. Repeat. Politicians hold many quasi-military jobs. The lowest being the police, which are soldiers, the attorneys and the CPAs next, who are spies, and saboteurs, who are licensed, and the judges, who shout the orders and run the closed union military shop for whatever the market will bear. The generals are industrialists. The presidential level of commander-in-chief is shared by the international bankers. The people know that they have created this farce and have financed it with their own taxes, which equal consent. But they would rather knuckle under than be the hypocrite. And thus a nation becomes divided into two very distinct parts: a docile subnation and a political subnation. The political subnation maintains and remains attached to the docile subnation, tolerates it, and leeches its substance until it grows strong enough to detach itself and devour its parent. Systems analysis. In order to make meaningful, computerized economic decisions about war, the primary economic flywheel, it is necessary to assign concrete logistical values to each element of the war structure, personnel, and material alike. And this system or process begins with a clear and candid description of the subsystems and such structure. Then it goes into the draft, how the draft was actually used, operations of things that took place at New York. And that reminds me back to what you were talking about, Dr. G.
There was two names in that video with that were the front men. Because like I said, we know that two men could not have achieved that alone.
Yes.
And someone asked what you're reading from. I wasn't.
They're asking for the read. Let me show them, because many of them are. This is what.
Bring it up a little bit. Oh, so that's the King Alfred plan.
Yes, it's Executive Order 11490.
Yeah, okay.
King Alfred.
From October 19th, 1969.
And remember, when it was issued in 69, officially issued, it was already in operations 25 years. So you can count 25 years before 1969, they were already operating all of the political structures with this information. And again, Dr. G, you can actually see the operations of the same nature of the operations of Job and the job market, and see that even the politicians take their position from Job.
But see, it started, though, when you look back at, again, I keep bringing up the orphan trains, those children were put into servitude at young ages. And so it was that job market was instilled in them at
exactly.
We think about sweatshops and stuff over in so-called
and the
Middle
education
East.
System is designed for the job market, not for the economic security of the people and families. So strategically, they've been, and we know they've been doing it to us in general, but we're looking at the relationship of Job and Job, is that they've been deliberately, everything that they've been doing has been structured around the Job market, broken and built to actually destabilize a people with the ultimate goal of the genocide, which is just below the surface and never really been hidden. And so this is back to even recognize what the reset is that you're talking about, Dr. G, because simply the reset is recycling the offspring of the children that they're killing off. The same.
Here's a segue. I'll share something else if you don't mind. In this same book, I'm still reading from The Navigator Who Crossed the Ice Wall, on page 34, and it says, "Can you explain to us which poisonings are you talking about?" So somebody was talking about the air. The air. Butler looked at the group somewhat with compunction and explained succinctly, "They poison the air. Let's see, how do I explain? The human that is born in their lands," which means over here where we are, gets sick quickly due to the work that the custodians, they call them those adversaries are called the custodians. The custodians do. This disease is usually implanted in the first humans, or better said, the babies left from the last reset, or maybe the second generation as well, to make sure. But then this is passed from generation to generation automatically. It is also not uncommon for them to poison the air they breathe, which is the most common way sometimes to continue to ensure future sick generations or simply docility. It is a very cruel race. I'm sorry that you had to find out this way. It says this disease is practically new. It was used in the last reset. I'm skipping over. Reset clarified the agent who was listening to our conversation. We are still studying. So they talk about what is in the air now. Still studying it closely, but what we know is that it makes their bodies age rapidly, and that only a small part of their lives are useful and profitable for them to then give way to the next generation quickly. They prefer it this way because the past longevity brought other conflicts. People had more time to analyze the situation in which they found themselves. They modify the human and mold it to their usefulness, avoiding any conflict. The idea is always to fulfill the cycle called, quote unquote, natural of the next reset. In other words, so does this mean that they shorten our lifespan? That's exactly what I'm saying. So basically, they, like I said, they don't want, we have unique, you and I and those in our age bracket, the over 60s and over 65 have actually lived long enough to see. A lot of our forefathers and grandmothers and grandfathers and parents did not get to see, like they say. Remember they say, was it Moses or something? Didn't get to he didn't get to go into the promised land. We have actually crossed over to from an extent that we see, the span of what they've done and can figure out what they're doing, where others did not get to figure that out, and that's why they're so up in arms, because we know what they're doing and what they've done.
And it's even back to where you see on a larger scale occurring, particularly in the Western Hemisphere. And I want to give a shout out to Titi Asa. And we were talking earlier today. Many of you know she's a scholar, speaks multiple languages, and she's a writer. And I've always suggested to her, I talked to her earlier today, and I said, you got to put out a book, because she has so many manuscripts, and she's really, we were talking it today, and she was talking about the last time when they were putting chemtrails, and she was saying today, as she was talking to me actually today, they were heavy chemtrails. And the last time her whole family got sick, and she brought that up to me. And we were talking about it earlier today, and we see that taking place even right now. And then the other thing that we were talking about earlier was actually things in the Job market. And the correlation is so clear, even right now, where with these industrialists, and then you look at the King Alfred operations, and you notice how they're strategically, quote unquote, laying people off, and they're destroying and even stealing directly their bank accounts, which of course we knew they were going to do. and we talked about it for years, but you see them becoming more and more open with their more direct attacks, trying to break the people because they can see that the people are waking up all around the world. Even when you look at the BRICS operation with the other nations, and then you look at the operations of their looking at nations, etc., relative to a mechanical machine, and are operating from that point of view, actually, with the Job market, knowing that their positions assigned among themselves are essentially Job's to do military operations, and the people are looking at them necessarily not correctly, but as quote unquote their government, not knowing that they're Trojan horse enemy, and their private, what was meant to be private, Executive Order 11490 is actually a military operation that's relative to the operations of Job against anything what you call natural or godly, etc., in its operation in society. The correlation is so exact and so spot on that people, when you go to those plants tomorrow, you're not going to your job, you're going to Job's operation. Yeah, and it's so clear that it's very, very, very interesting. And they've been people don't even for the most part, when you read the technical manual that the politicians and the municipal quote unquote corporate heads have among themselves, the people, it never dawned on the people when they were receiving mail and they were designated as taxpayer. It was actually an instrument of consent to slavery. So when they send instruments to you and they call you taxpayer and you don't contest it, they're actually saying that you've consented. And that's their direct quote, even here. Interesting, isn't it, Dr. G?
Oh yeah, it is. It absolutely is. But one of the things that I'm comforted by and knowing that at the end of the day, and if you just look at it, you people like yourself and others have been able to overcome and survive, and we will survive based on where our mindset is, because we are a part of the infinite, regardless of what fractionalized a bit that we seem to we play in each reality or each lifetime that we live. We still are part of the great, the all that is all.
Yes.
And if your mind is in such a manner that which you can project yourself where you want to be, living how you want to live, you will overcome, outdo, outlive, outrun, and you will be able to excel in areas where they have doomed you to failure. Yes. And the problem is that the masses have been so programmed.
The programming is back to the job market.
Right.
When you study, even when the people who the general public, not knowing, think is quote unquote their government, everything that they were structuring was actually to the detriment of the people.
I mean, everything. I mean, retirement and
everything.
When you think about retirement, reaching retirement age, you think about how they wrote in the Bible that we are given a man's days are 70, and if by reason of strength you might get 10 more. I was like, well, damn, if that's the case, that I would be 2 years away from what they say is the end if I had that mindset. But a lot of people, when they leave the Job
and build their life around it,
absolutely, they leave the Job and then they plan to sit in a rocking chair and rust away.
Discover that you never leave.
Well, one of the things
the intention is.
One of the things I was saying when I hit 60, well, darn, I'm at least gonna be here till I'm 120. And some people thought I was crazy, but people used to live to be, people in other places live to be over 200.
Yes.
And so we don't realize that we are so behind the eight ball. We are so beneath the standards of life and living, and just the productivity that we can have based on the programming and the indoctrination that we have been subjected to on purpose. And then it makes sense.
Psychic attack.
Yeah, and it also makes sense of why so many of our young men are killing each other, because that's also a part of the plan. It's a way to get rid of. Once they get to a certain age, they really live their usefulness unless they produce more babies that when they do their reset, they can take them babies if they're under 7. Right. So everything is happening the way it's happening in order to reduce our numbers.
And even when and the interesting thing, and it's not new because this is it's redundant information. It's just we're trying to how do you say inspire people to start looking at that none of these things that are occurring in the social structure and the economics is accidental.
No.
When you read the book of Job, then you look at Job, then you look at the job market, then you look at the orphan trains, then you look at the executive orders of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, look at the executive orders by Woodrow Wilson, etc. Um, all of those Coolidge, Calvin Coolidge, look at all of them, and it's all correlates. Even with the
you know what, Chris, you got me to cut your wisdom, but now that you're saying that, I believe that a lot of them were those created babies that they were made. They didn't come through the union of a man and a woman, and coming together. They made them so that they could be in those positions in order to do the bidding of
they were place.
There you go. But I believe they were
and
created.
It's something when you think about it, Dr. G, you would on the surface until you start analyzing some of this stuff, you would never come to that conclusion until you start doing research and start making correlations of these reference points. And you'll see that none of these situations that are operating on the land are accidental. Of course, we know that, but we're just presenting this to give the people something to think about. Because from the divine principle, when the people start thinking, the creative force that begins to make solutions to some of these demonic activities is actually going to come from themselves.
Yeah. Somebody said that the incubators babies had no souls. I believe that.
Oh yeah,
they had no souls. That's why they can do these soulless acts. That's why down through the years they have been able to, make war or make decisions that would be to the detriment of the majority of humanity because they are soulless. They don't have any. There's no ever after for them.
They're directly groomed under the animal husbandry of John D. Rockefeller's General Education Board, since 1902. So there's very few people that are operating in the physical aggregate today that have any reference point prior, actual directive reference point in order to counter the operations of King Alfred, because most of the people don't even know that that's the root manual of the politicians from the city municipal governments on up to the federal. Yeah. We know it data wise, and we know it politically, but the average living man and woman don't look at their job being actually related to Job, and that the miseries placed upon Job by the Satanists is actually inculcated in the operations of the Circle Church and Chancery via the United States Corporation Company. And then you can see the prima facie dispensation of the deliberate misconception of the corporation of the Pope being misrepresented for all these years as a country. Not accidental.
I'm going to read this comment because it's something that I've been saying for so many. You probably heard me say this. Love Moses says, or breeding nuns in those maternity suits. First stop for pregnant girls, then 20 more into incubator, no contact. Yeah. That's what I've been saying. Like I said, they really had bad habits underneath those habits, because it covered up what was actually going on with them in those situations.
A lot of people don't know. Yeah, and you know what? And when you think about it, on the surface, even when you talk about the actual covered up lack of morality from the perspective that we may view of that, most people never thought of the nunnery as actually being a in-house breeding program of the priesthood.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. We thought it was something. He thought it was something holy. They were taking a vow of chastity. It was nothing chaste about them at all.
And even when you do research, Dr. G, and it is well known by scholars and sociologists around the world of all of those churches having those which have been examined from here from time to time have actually been found to have hundreds and hundreds of skeletons of babies in their foundation.
In the chambers down
Yeah.
lower in the dungeons of the under
Hmm.
the yeah.
And it's known, it's not emphasized, but it's known. And so when you even think about, the even going back to, what people don't know, that evidence of even what was happening in the early, more, how do you say, more available to the public in the early 40s, the cloning.
Mm-hmm.
And then you look at that and you look at the hybriding, or what you call cloning technology, that the people may assume that is actually new. It is actually ancient.
It's old. It's old. It's old. I wish I could have put some of these pictures up. That was like,
Oh yeah,
yeah.
that was
I mean, these pictures are like will just make you go, oh gosh.
oh yeah,
Bake them. They were.
because I was looking at those pictures that you sent me the other day. And the funny thing, some of these pictures
Look at
over the
that.
years we've seen. Yeah, some of these pictures we've seen. Yeah,
PR Bakeham's. Let me see.
yeah. PR Bacon's baby incubator, 12 months growth in 1 hour. I know some of you
I
can't
don't know.
see this,
I don't know
but
if that'll show up. And it's
I
not
don't know.
showing up. It's not showing up. I'll have to
Yeah.
put the pictures somewhere.
Yeah, sure.
We have to put them on the web
You
on the
gonna start
website.
doing some,
We
yeah.
have to put them on the website somewhere.
Yeah.
But they were actually PR Bakeham's. I mean, if were they baking babies?
And it's even like, as we talked, Dr. G, about the fiat system, right?
Yeah.
And even the animal husbandry training.
Clone. Look at them.
Yeah.
They all look alike except the
Yep,
one that looks a little
absolutely.
sickly. There's a little sickly one. They can't see that.
They can't see it.
Oh, they can see a little. Turn it that way a little.
This way.
No, the other way. Oh, my phone. Take it down. My phone's
Yeah.
ringing. Somebody's trying to call. But anyway, I'm going to try to maybe put these on the member side of the House of Reawakening Minds website. So if you're not a member, go over there to join, so you can get these pictures.
Mm-hmm.
You can get these pictures.
Wow. Really interesting.
It is extremely. It is extremely interesting, and we can probably go on and about this, but we do have to digress just a little bit because we had some stuff that happened this weekend, and we want to talk about it. Plus, an update for Brother Consul General, and so we want to make sure that we
spoke to earlier, and I'm sure you spoke to him earlier too.
Yeah, just want to get that information in, and I wanted you to talk about this past weekend. And if anybody is in the comment in the chat that was here on the past weekend,
3 days, we had a good time, and we celebrated Dr. G's solar return, Earth Day, and also Abundance Child was on the same day, and we had more than a good time. Even though I know that many of the people that came, were, tired from traveling from all over the country, from the Pacific to the Atlantic, etc., from the north to the south, from the south to the north, etc. We thank you all for sharing the time with us, and it was a wonderful time, wasn't it, Dr. G?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Then we went for the nature walk. That was fun too.
We actually had, but could you talk a little bit about Consul General, because so many want to know.
A lot of things have been going on.
And I'm going to put a banner up so that if those of you who, while he's talking, I'm going to put a banner up so you can.
And the corporate operatives of the Circle Church.
He doesn't want to talk about today though.
Today?
Not today. Not what happened today.
Oh, all right.
All right.
Because we talk regularly, and everything we don't report because many of the people don't know what's going on in the background, and many others with less than honorable intentions would usually misrepresent. And so we communicate with them often, etc. And we're talking, as a matter of fact, today about the foreign bills of exchange that were presented to him by computer because they refused, anyway. Due process is being denied, just put it that way. in order to intimidate the other people, because as people are becoming more and more conscious and are addressing it, it's also having a direct effect on the bond system, which is related to the U.S. Treasury bonds, which are issued from 55 Water Street, that would not appear to be on the surface related. It is all absolutely related. But one of the things that I also mentioned, Dr. J, and I requested them to um, reference you, because I know that a lot of people will come through the House of Reawakening Minds to donate for Consular General.
But we have on the screen right now where
the screen
they have
more
the action,
direct,
yeah,
more
so
direct.
And there is a lot of, everything has been cut off basically.
Yes.
And when he does call in and has to make the calls, or it needs paperwork copy or things like that, the calls are like 25 to 35 cents per minute, depending on whether it's in state or out state.
To constrict
And the paperwork that needs to be copied and sent and so forth, and on behalf. So this, you can right now, I have that. If you can take a picture of, if you're on your computer, you can take a picture of this and it'll take you right to the link, because that's a QR code. If not, you see $ donations, the number 4 Con-Gen. That any donations can go directly there. We were able to speak with him on Saturday. He gave a presentation to those who were in attendance, a really good presentation to let us know exactly what had occurred up until that point, particularly what happened on the day in which he was kidnapped, and it was clear-cut case of a setup. So, but nevertheless, there's other things that are going on, and your support is needed. So I asked him at the end, if you remember, I said, what is it we can do? And he basically wants us to go to the website, enforcetheconstitution.org, and to actually enforce the Constitution. There's information, I believe, that was recently updated on there with regard to some paperwork that was filed just this past week, and they were able to update that. I'm just gonna, but www.enforcetheconstitution.org. If you go to the website, please, you can read those latest, what would they call? Are they writs of
entries?
Okay, the entries that have been entered, if you will, updated, and so you'll know what's going on. But basically, it is a matter of us enforcing the Constitution. But in the meantime, the support, let me bring this down so you can see it. $ donations, the number 4 Con and Gen. Please, 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 if you wanted to, and because a lot. I've talked with the sister that's doing a lot, handling a lot for him, and she's got her own situations, and yet she seems that she's almost working alone when it comes to this. And apparently, it's almost like when they talk about the strike, the shepherd and the sheep scattered. And so a lot of folks have scattered.
They told you exactly right in the story of Job.
Right. So a lot of folks who have scattered that really were, apparently, you kind of thought were with him, and now they're thinking, well, he did something wrong, or we need to do another way. But no, not even realizing that he's being made an example of.
He's POW.
So that the rest of us will
intimidate the others from executing their actual obligation to treaty and constitution in relationship to government.
Yes. So, but if you go somewhere asking how to get into that situation and so forth, I'm just saying, please go to.
You'll find that on the site.
On the website. Please go to the website, enforcetheconstitution.org, and you will be able to see it. But if you can, whatever, it's 947 folks here. If 947 folks send $1, that's going to help with, for phone calls, help with food,
go directly
because
to the
he
site.
can't, he can't really. He doesn't eat the stuff that, and when you go into places like this, now you're forced to eat stuff that your body is not used to and so forth. But mostly he's trying to get the communication out. So please, 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 this is being handled by a sister who's doing a yeoman's job, if you will, almost by herself, and who has her own situations that she's dealing with. So we need to, you wanted to know what's going on. He sounds very well. I'm pretty sure that in his time alone, he is not as upbeat as he is, but he's keeping the faith. and he's keeping the faith, so to speak, for the rest of us. So,
Yes.
and that's the best way that I can put it, because I do talk to him at least once or twice a week, y'all. But last week he did give us an update. And I was glad that the other folks were there and they heard it themselves, so that
Yeah,
they would know.
directly.
Yeah. So, but we wanted to get that information to you so that you would, be able to lend your support. Also, Grand Sheik, we want to also we have that save the date poke flyer up, if you will, so that folks will know that we are coming back together. There was a great build on last weekend, and the folks were already planning. They were like, when are we going to do it again? So we're going to try to do a summer and then one in the fall. But if you would save the date, more information will be forthcoming for our next event, which is actually July 28th through the 30th, another 3-day event. So, mark that on you. We have folks like Grand Sheik, you said, from all over, from almost sea to shining sea, if you will, from Cali to, all the way here on the other side of where we are on the coast. So please be prepared for that. And lastly, and I'm going to let you close out, Grand Sheik. I wanted to introduce my little stuff that I got. No, well,
I want to introduce this too.
You do? Oh, you wanted to? Wait a minute, but I have something that y'all don't go anywhere, because I know y'all like to go, and he's gonna talk some more. So don't go anywhere. It's just that I have to do like 3 things at once to try to make to show things the way I'm doing it, because I'm not really a what do you call it? I'm not a video person. I'm individual, not a person. But I wanted to make sure. So first I'm putting that up. I'm putting a little that thing right there up. And then next I'm going to put this link here up. And secondly, I'm going to take this down. And then I'm going to y'all have to forgive me. I'm trying to figure this out. And I will get to it in just a minute. There we go. And then Grand Sheik wants to say something.
It's Dr. G, and I'm so excited to present to you my new hair and skin oil. Dr. G's Hair Cares and Skin Too. Yes, it is a wonderful blend of oils that are beneficial to the skin and the scalp. Yes, it promotes and protects hair growth. It also nourishes and hydrates the skin and the scalp, and is paraben and sulfate free. It has a fragrance that is neutral enough that both women, men, and even children can wear. And it is all natural. So listen, if I were you, I'd get my bottle of today. It's a 4-ounce bottle. We'll ship it out to you. Not sure how long we can keep this in stock. So I would check the link and purchase some today. It's going to be your new favorite go-to oil for the hair and the skin and the scalp. So get some today. Dr. G's Hair Cares and Skin Too.
Say something about it. There we go.
Yeah. Again, it's interesting. So as you see, what's the attacks, the psychic attacks that are being made on the people through the job market is directly directed or correlating with the operations of the psychic attacks from the Satanists on Job against his loyalty and honor, integrity to God, etc. So the people today actually are, like we talked about a few years ago, Dr. J, that all masks go off and everyone's now being forced to prove their God.
Absolutely.
One way or another. Can't be hidden.
Yes. All right. Well, listen, we got about 6 minutes. What's that? What they said? Is my hair going to get long and thick as Grand Sheik Taj Tarik using it because I'm bald? I don't know.
Mine every month.
Yeah. Well, it'll be good for your skin and your hair, and it's good for edges, so it's probably good. I don't know if it's gonna grow a whole head of hair, but it might. Who knows? Don't hold me to it, but it works for me, y'all. But we want to make sure that we're bringing you the information that you need. Please, if you have not joined our website, there's two ways. There's a subscribe, and then there's a member. We want you to become a member because membership has its privileges, and that's when we do those things where you don't. We call it unfiltered, and we're not on YouTube or Facebook. You need to be a member. You'll get a notification that we have something going on, or that we've recorded something that's over there for you. It's free. So please, I don't know what you're waiting for. You need to go over to our website and you need to join. You need to subscribe and you need to become a member. You need to do that. Let me make sure I put the right one up, because there's a lot more coming, Grand Sheik, and we're looking forward to like printed material. Some of your works that they will be able to, some things that they can download.
More direct.
Right. It won't just be videos. And then there's a whole community building up over there. In the membership side,
yes.
You can put your picture, your profile. You can find out who's in your area. Because a lot of times, how Moors will say, well, I'm the only Moor I know in my area. So you might not know anymore, but there may be some more Moors in your area looking for you like you're looking for them. But unless you say, hey, I'm in Missouri, or I'm in, wherever I am, I'm in Florida and I'm in Sarasota. Once you do that, then somebody can link up with you and you all can become study partners and so forth. So we want this to be a place where, you don't have to go outside of that to find the information. We're coming up with a market. I'm excited, Grand Sheik, about market share.
Oh, yeah.
And market share, where you'll be able to post for a very, very minimal fee, but you'll be able to post your business or your service. And we can go in there and look for what we need in our area and make sure that our fiat or whatever we're using, our gold and silver, is being circulated the right way. So just, become a member of the website and let us grow this. We're not quite at 1,000 yet. And if we have about almost 31,000 subscribers to the channel. So, we really want you to be part of this. Grand Sheik, before we go, we got the last 3 minutes. They're yours.
Oh, well, again, long O, short O, Job, job, totally related. And when you look at the operations now, we've already told you, so we're not going to, beat a dead horse. We told you take your energy instruments, known as a private commercial paper, known as fiat, out the banks. So do what you can to secure your families. Listen to your holistic doctors. Eat better food, etc. Think better. Be positive, because it's our responsibility collectively to start helping one another to make this a better place to live, while the dark priesthood is being dismantled. And I'll say grand evening to you. Thanks.
Got a little bit more time. Keep giving them a little bit more.
Yes. Well, I don't have too much more to say other than that. And also, for those who are interested, Dr. G just mentioned when they were asking what I was reading from, it's available. We've been sharing it for, the last
several years.
30 years. Rex 84, Executive Order 11490, King Alfred. And so to let you know that the people who you, for lack of information, lack of knowledge, were considering or looking at as your government have actually not been that at all. They've been governing over your estate and actually practicing and maintaining established human trafficking. Unfortunate reality, that's the fact. And so the psychic attacks on Job by the Satanists, etc., is what's being expressed through the Circle Church and Chancery members of the Sadducees and Pharisees on the people themselves, and particularly the people of the Western Hemisphere, under the operations of the Unum Sanctum U.S. Democracy Operations, i.e. United States Corporation Company, against the Aboriginal people of the world. And so you can look at those dynamics of Job and then look at the job market and watch how it's being used as a weapon to injure the people, and come together, reclaim your resources, reclaim your lost estate, get with those people who are working for the restoration of the Aboriginal peoples to their lands and their rights to their resources. And with that, I say have a grand evening.
Thank you so very much. We appreciate you tuning in with us. And I will see you next Tuesday with my buddy, Real Nagas will be back. We'll have to. Yeah. We're gonna have a conversation again, and I have some others planned, but he'll be here next Tuesday, and then Grand Sheik, you'll be back first Friday.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And y'all know this is off week because we just wanted to come to you because we were celebrating and doing our up close and personal last Friday, so that's why. So we just want to make sure you got those two. Oh, last thing.
Yeah.
Next month. Mm-hmm. For those of you who are in the tri-state area, we are going to be resuming our in-person classes with Dr. Grand Sheik. Mm-hmm. And I believe it'll be like the fourth Friday. Mm-hmm. The fourth Friday of April at the House of Reawakening Minds. More information will be up. And if you want to meet Grand Sheik, or if you used to come to our Friday classes, we're going to resume the fourth Friday at 7 p.m. for those here in Wilmington, Delaware. So if you want more information, it'll be up on the...
Yeah, welcome back.
Yeah, it'll be back. It'll be up on the website, and we invite you to come and check us out where we are now. It's thanks again to the, to our volunteers and the great work along with Grand Sheik that they did until... so for next time, we're going to say...
Grand evening.
Grand evening, grand evening, grand evening.
And of course, we can be more direct.
The deeper and deeper I go, I find what it is I should know. 'Cause it's just a matter of time that you'll reawaken your mind. Oh, come with me, come to know and find out what is true. Then you'll know what's in store just for you. No more living a lie. I can look to the sky and say, I'm reawakening minds. Come to know and find out what is truth, yes. Then you'll know what's in store just for you. No more living a lie. I can look to the sky and say, I'm reawakening minds.